Ah,
56 ruby shards and 4 baby yetis. We can neither confirm nor deny that. Sorry.
it looks like we have gone directly from the login screen to a match.
Yes. Awesome. So we see Colin drawing his opening hand here. He is on a delay, right? Yeah,
He's
okay.
on a delay, so no need for a hand guard for the moment. So we can talk about how there are no less than three construction plans, hornet pots in hand, and a gearsmith.
That is a lot of plans to start out. So it looks like Colin playing the dwarf aggro deck that we have seen a few times before. I like dwarf aggro if you expect a lot of control decks, that's for sure.
I like Dwarf Aggro that because that means I have lots of time between rounds to do whatever I want.
That is also a very good point. We see
I,
here.
I so turn one gearsmith, you will find either a charge bot or a geode. The charge bot seems to be a little bit of better value as a -1 cost. Hex Geode doesn't quite give you that much of an advantage. And Colin has plenty of resources to gain those thresholds.
Now, something that's interesting too, we see Lothlorien playing Wyatt, which is not unheard of, but a little bit different. But he has a blood shard on the first turn there, so we know he's playing at least blood and sapphire here.
I joked about flavors of Sapphire, but it is true. Sapphire's got some powerful cards, but paired with another shard's support, players have been tended to find that it's just a little bit stronger than just straight up mono Sapphire.
Yeah, it's certainly true in a matchup like this here, where having access to a card like Extinction could prove pivotal in the matchup here. We see just a second blood shard from Lothlorien and a pass here.
Well, there's that. That is that threshold needed for Extinction. Just have to see whether Colin can race a removal like that. But it is a pretty fast hand, as we're about to see a worker bot, likely an Electroid, and a construction plans Hornet bot. The Hornet bot already can, the worker bot and Electroid can be exhausted to create that worker bot ready to attack next turn, and he can attack with both of his 1/1s, his Gearsmith and his Charge bot for 2 damage in.
Yeah, with this slow of a start from Lothlorien, I think a lot of the game is going to depend on whether he does actually have that Extinction in hand or draws into it here. Very fast start from Colin.
Once Lothlorien hits 4 resources, though, there's several cards we mentioned. Extinction, a Vampire King, is big enough to just stop one of these while gaining 3 health. Um, and a Tunneled Blood card, blood or neutral. He does not have any Sapphire resources at Sapphire Threshold at the moment, and in fact plays a crackling
Vortex. Yeah.
vortex.
Interesting. I don't typically play you don't see the Crackling Vortex as often in the dual shard decks there because just the thresholds that you need. But I see Lothlorien wants to be able to draw more cards here, apparently. But not quite yet without the double Sapphire thresholds.
We know that cannot be a Reese tunneled with no Sapphire Threshold, so and the number of shardless and blood cards that one tunnels in a competitive in constructed is actually fairly limited. I would put a guess on that is actually a monsoon.
Monsoon, maybe Wakizashi could be as well.
Could be
Both of those are
Wakizashi.
reasonable cards.
I have to remember that our favorite removal tunneling bunny does exist.
We see the attack here from Colin for 6 damage here. Gonna put a pretty good clock on Lothlorien. He did draw the War Machinist. Now, turn 1 War Machinist is very strong. It looks like...
Is
Looks like Colin's
Colin
onto it,
is
though.
Colin going to play that third war machine? No, I think Colin has realized that an extinction is a definite possibility and has played 2 troops that will not, not 2 troops, 2 cards that will not get affected by that extinction.
Right, smart move from Colin's point of view. He's probably already winning the race right here, unless... I guess the downside would be if we see the Vampire King. We do see extinction here, though.
Now I expect here to put one counter on each of these construction plants Hornet bot, and as we can see, he is doing exactly that. Colin is not just a very generous soul giving prizes and not needing to collect cards. No, he can play. He is ready. He is constructed ready. And all prepared to start getting these Hornet bots out for some additional pressure.
Yeah, as the dwarf player, it's good to have a couple of cards that you can turn into additional troops, whether it's the construction plans that have just counters on them or a Mega Hulk that is tunneled. Something like that is definitely good to have post extinction. Thank you, Jay. So we see Colin here playing both the War Machinist and the Electroid. And of course, with one counter on each of those construction plans, Colin will be able to turn both of those into 2/1s and will also be able to attack with Electroid on this next turn. So Lothlorien did have the extinction, and Colin still has a lot of pressure left because he decided to play around it here.
Do you see a Vampire King being played by Lothlorien? It is kind of a wall. The 2/1 flight Hornet bots won't really get around it. Neither will they trigger War Machinists. They're simply being transformed. They are not entering play.
Now I don't know if Colin is playing them because we're not going to look at the deck list here, but he would ideally want to have something like a Time Ripple at this point off the top of his deck.
That's not altogether a bad pull.
Yeah, Terabot here is pretty good. Certainly able to at least get in front of the Vampire King. And it'll deal 1 damage if he decides to go ahead and play it here from the War Machinist.
I don't think at this point you can hold it back. If Lothlorien has a second extinction, that's probably going to be game, but holding it back, it's one of those cards. If there is an extinction and it is played, it's much harder to get it out of your hand, so might as well. It also enables a double block on Vampire King. Although
Yeah,
I believe the Hornet bots could anyway.
Yeah, he could have double blocked with the Hornet bots there if he wanted to. And I think Vampire King's important enough that you probably would most of the time. But if that is the Monsoon, then it wouldn't actually end up doing anything. The Vampire King would still come back. So this turn, perhaps the play would be just block with the Terabot. Oh, well, Lothlorien's not going to attack, so it doesn't matter anyway.
I don't think it benefits him to attack. He could have double blocked before, but Terabot and Hornet bot enable a block where the Terabot lives. Otherwise, he would lose 2 Hornet bots, which I suppose would be worth it to get rid of a Vampire King.
Almost makes me wonder if it's not a Monsoon under there. I'm not sure. I mean, you only end up getting rid of a Hornet bot with this if he would have attacked last turn. But maybe he just wants to protect himself to make sure he doesn't die. I mean, clearly he's still missing the Sapphire. He only has blood at this point. So it could be that he's just trying to stay alive until he gets the Sapphire to play his Sapphire cards.
It is indeed the rare, the Shogun of Windajin Monsoon surfacing from being tunneled. Not a single troop with a decoy counter had died, so no additional benefit. But that is a Rage 2 3/3 would speed this turn. But Colin at 20 health might even just take that damage were an attack to happen.
You know, I'm starting to wonder if Lothlorien is just trying to play with us, and if he's just actually playing mono blood and he's actually has the wrong champion there or something.
That charge bot. Now Colin should be attacking soon. That charge bot will give that 6th charge in this game, enabling another worker bot to use that construct foreman he did not play earlier. There wasn't when he drew that last turn. He didn't have a target, obviously. Oh, that's interesting. I guess the charge bot's as good a target as any. perhaps not needing the worker bot yet, or maybe going extinction is a possibility, and I don't want to be completely unarmed. I think if I were I was expecting the worker bot to be created and then that become a war bot just to have one additional troop for one additional damage.
Right. With the Vampire King on defense, Lothlorien is basically at 12. So having as many attackers as you can to try to push through damage, like even if you're giving away troops, but just to be able to deal some damage to Lothlorien there might have been the way to go. See another blood shard here. And no other plays. Lothlorien probably just really needs the Sapphire. He's probably just stuck with Sapphire cards in his hand.
Which we can only assume there should be fairly heavy Sapphire in there, given Wyatt the Sapper's charge power does have a threshold cost of 2 Sapphire. So it's not something, not usually a champion you would choose if you're heavily blood with a little bit of Sapphire.
Yeah, like with the mono blood decks, we've seen Cranach that gets some play. There's one of the dual shards. So we do finally see the first Sapphire here for Lothlorien. He's been able to stay alive relatively well.
Extinction in a Vampire King tends to do that. The
Knight joining the party.
Knight, a Storm Cloud, just the Sapphire Showcase right now, double Storm Cloud even. That explains the Crackling Vortexes. It's an interesting little deck. Had that Sapphire come one turn sooner, or 2 turns sooner, that combo with Monsoon would mean a lot of cards in Lothlorien's hand. Instead, at 8 resources and just one single card.
Yeah, I like the tag team of Mirror Knight with Monsoon. Both of them want you to have your troops trading with your opponent's troops or dying for value in some other way. So definitely a nice little combo there. You see Colin playing a shard here. Probably just going to pass. Feels like the window for Colin is closing here.
Right. An aggressive robot deck does want to win earlier rather than later. We're already at 8 resources for Lothlorien, and that's outside the window. If a Tectonic Mega Hulk or 2 isn't coming up, then this deck has a problem with mid game statted allies troops.
I mean, Colin could be playing some unusual cards, maybe a Stormcall, maybe a Grolk. I don't know. Those would be the best types of cards for him to be playing, but I don't know if he actually has any of those in here.
I've generally noticed 2 ways people tend to play the Dwarf Robot aggro decks. There's the just outright, oh, that's an interesting card.
That is an interesting card.
You were just talking about interesting cards. We don't normally see this in this style deck. And this certainly is a surprise, so let's see how this goes. And Gore Feast.
Gore Feast of Cogtopedal. Dwarf Feast, as you may.
Now this is a Sapphire deck, so there's a risk of Verdict. There is a risk of not counter magic because there's not enough Sapphire threshold.
Right. Not counter magic right now, but he could have had it if he had the Sapphire. But yeah, right now it's Verdict or removal.
And it does resolve. Now, there's one minor thing that Colin hasn't done. He's saved his charge power. I would have probably just used it to get that extra 1 damage.
Right. Because it seems very likely that you want to attack with the Machinist here, right?
The last card in hand is revealed to be Terrobot. I mean, not Terrobot. No, Time Ripple. There was an extra additional card.
Time Ripple to put the Terrobot back, yeah. Does make the attack a little bit weaker here. Colin doing the math to figure out if he should be attacking here. Deciding which ones he can afford to give up.
Now, Lothlorien is effectively at at 12 health because of the Vampire King. He's making it so that blocking either the Electroid or the Warbot results in a dead Vampire King.
So it's interesting here because the Terabot costs 2 now. Even if Colin makes another bot from his champion power, he has to have 2 bots that would survive in order to replay the Terabot post combat. Because Lothlorien did choose to do the time ripple after the first main phase, like at the beginning of the combat there. So Colin needs to have 2 troops survive in order to replay the Terabot. However, if he had done it before combat, Colin could have just played the Terabot, and I think he would have attacked with everything. But because he didn't, I think Colin has decided he wants to have the bots back just in case, so that he's able to protect the Terabot from the Vampire King's attack power.
So Monsoon blocking the Warbot. Vampire King is now low. A net total of 1 damage done, and the War Machinist is dead now.
Yes. So we do miss out on the 1 damage. We see the second attack from the Gore Feast. This time, Colin attacking with everything. It's interesting that he played it safe the first time, but then he decides to go in with everything the second time.
I think it's so that Vampire King, if Vampire King wants to block one of those Hornet bots, he'll die. Trying to think of a synonym for die isn't quite working right now.
Yeah, but I think you're still in the same spot regardless, right? Because he could have had 1 less Hornet bot here, but he would still be in the same spot where he needs to block here, I think.
But that does leave an empty board. An Electrode that can't quite attack yet will next turn give in a Worker bot plus Terabot.
That's true.
And their attacks are through the roof at the moment. They lose the Rage one for the turn.
That's right. A lot of times when you're playing Gore Feast in particular, one of the goals is not necessarily to kill the opponent the same turn, but just to get them low enough and have some evasive guys that have higher attack that can go and kill them on the next turn. Of course, we see Extinction here, so that's not going to matter.
I can only imagine that was a top deck.
It's probably one of the cards that was drawn from the dead clouds there, yeah.
That is true.
We do see another Mirror Knight from Lothlorien here. There have been 2 Extinctions played. Chances are pretty good that he doesn't have another one, but you never know for sure.
You play 3 or 4 if you're playing Extinction, almost certainly. Hey, that's a neat card.
I just mean in his hand right now, right? So we see Colin, who decides to tunnel here.
So that means Colin's version of the robot deck does have some legs yet. Reached a Crest
He's
Crawler.
got some spice here. He's got a few unpredictable cards, right?
We're talking about how the deck normally doesn't have anything to lead it through the mid and late game, but as you can see, that is definitely a card that can do that. Zentos Inquisitor, I assume it has the prime gem of whatever it is, brutality.
Yeah, the reduce the attack power of your opponent's troop. Looks like that's what that one is supposed to be.
But no opposing troop target for that, so just played for a 3/1. That'll be resilient if a worker bot does happen. Did you jump in and go, I'll protect you?
Now, should also point out, tunneling last turn made sense because the Terabot, unfortunately, costing an additional 1. Colin does not have enough resources, even if he would have made the bot there that last turn.
He could do it here, and that bot could also double as blocking the Zendos Inquisitor, but it is only temporary, as when it dies, it goes back to Lothlorien's hand at +2 cost, so that would just be temporary. Instead, given that Reese is cooking down there, saving that could result in a much better bot. Not 100%, but...
Right. So Colin is playing for the longer game here, which is interesting. saving the champion power so that he can make the better bots instead of just going with the Terrabot, which Lothlorien doesn't have any flyers currently. And being a big artifact flyer, I mean, Lothlorien could have Vampire King. He could have Extinction again.
Also, the Zentos Inquisitor does have the text, when this dies, draw a card, which will happen, and he'll draw a card, and then he'll get inspired if he's replayed. So I think that is probably in Colin's best interest to not stop that until he has to. He's still got plenty of health, though, going down to 15 after this attack.
I'd say in recent tournaments, Zentos Inquisitor is a card that I've really liked and I think has gotten better, especially when you see a lot of Vampire Kings from the opponent, which we do see a Vampire King here, I believe, with the reduced cost. So we actually have, that was one of the ones he drew off of the Zodiac Divination there. Yep, in fact it is, because he spent 8 total that turn. Should also point out, Lothlorien does have the second Sapphire here, so if he did have a counter magic, potentially even a 2-cost counter magic, he would be able to go ahead and use it.
It is now active. It looks like Colin has decided waiting 2 more turns for that worker bot isn't going to work. It's going to have. He wants to stop that Vampire King, even if Zentos Inquisitor does reduce the attack of that Terrabot. That 5 defense will be able to wall off that Vampire King for a while.
Yeah, and he pretty much has to. I mean, if he doesn't play it there, then the Vampire King has a 50% chance to just turn it into a vampire. So I think you pretty much have to go for it there.
What that does mean is that from the 8 health that Lothlorien is at, every Vampire King attack will increase that. Lothlorien also reaching his second charge power, that 10th charge, drawing an additional card. He's drawn lots of cards this game off what turns out to be a timely Cerulean Mirror Knight, timely Sapphire. We're also now playing the how high cost can I get that Terrabot as Buccaneer. Can't imagine another target besides the Terrabot.
Oh yeah, no, this is great synergy here. We see Lothlorien playing both Ripple and Buccaneer. Good synergy with the Vampire King. Put the troop back in the hand that you really don't want to face against. And especially if it's an aggro deck like what Colin has here. Don't have many cards left at this point, and there's a really good chance that he's going to hit that Terrabot. Did you see the swing here from Lothlorien for 7? Colin just deciding to take it all. Let's see if he hits. And he does reveal the Terrabot. It does turn into a vampire here.
A 4-cost vampire. As it transforms and does not revert the card revealed, Vampire King. A pretty good card. Colin will likely, for game 2, put in answers for that, whether they be time ripples or they be a non-existent ruby card that does 4 damage.
I mean, there are some cards that theoretically can answer him, but yeah, overall, Vampire King is very good against aggressive decks, especially just Sapphire Ruby decks in general. There's not a lot of good answers. Crackling Bolt, Burn, Time Ripple. Time Ripple is really the best of the bunch, and it's just a delaying tactic, which is good enough if you do have a lot of pressure on the board already. But as we saw from the Extinction there, it's kind of hard to keep a lot of pressure on the board when you're playing against a deck like that.
Colin does concede game 1. He is imminent defeat next turn, just drawing a shard at the end. At least I thought it was a shard. Doesn't matter at this point. But I actually, now that I look at it, I think this Hex login screen is actually just a static image. He didn't.
Yeah, it is. It's
we've been fooled.
He wasn't trying to troll us. He just confused us a little bit. That's just his splash page there.
Just hiding that side deck. In a competitive setting, you do want to. I mean, while streaming is greatly appreciated and does reveal a little bit of your play to the outside, if you can help, that's one of the reasons why we pan away from the game after between games. We want to respect deck lists and side decks and don't want to reveal more information than we need to. And that's just one way we help, players help, and we have fun all around. Huge thank you to everybody out there in the Ruby Cup who's streaming, whether we end up featuring you or not. You provide lots of entertainment. Make sure to check out the Hex Twitch category if you'd like to find more games, watch at the same time, find a deck that you like, that you want to win, cheer them on. I'm sure all of these streaming players will appreciate that.
I know I would appreciate that for sure. JJ made me do it. Please go stream.
And that was off the back of no Sapphire for 7-8 shards.
That is true. I mean, we made the joke that maybe he was playing a mono blood deck and just picked the wrong champion, but yeah, he actually was just shards. I don't know, threshold screwed. That's really the right one there. He was threshold screwed there for a while, but he did end up getting it soon enough that he was able to recover there. Extinction doing a lot of work there, especially the second extinction there. Just getting rid of the team and keeping him in the game.
Definitely, a mono Sapphire deck has less options against that. It usually relies on Menacing Growl, sometimes Stormcall, maybe even yesterday, but even all of those don't permanently solve the problem as well as Extinction does.
Right, or potentially Mastery of Time if you have some attackers or if you've groked them already. There's not a lot though, yeah. Like overall, there's not a lot of hard removal available to Sapphire, which is intentional and good. So yeah, those dwarf decks oftentimes are favored there, but with the blood in there and having Extinction, it makes a pretty big difference. I would imagine. Again, not looking at the deck list here, but I would imagine if I'm in Colin's spot, I'm probably bringing in some numbers of either Counter Magic or Verdict here, because it feels like the most important card in this matchup has got to be Extinction. Vampire King is also an important piece, but I really feel like Extinction is kind of the key thing, because if you don't have Extinction, at a certain point, you could still overpower the Vampire King by just having too many attackers.
Like we almost saw with the Gore Feast attack. But offering Vampire King as to the ability to block something with only 2 attack, really tempting. He did gain 6 health off of blocking twice. Pretty worth that Vampire King at that point.
That's true. And it's hard to say because we didn't see his half of it, but he may have even drawn the Extinction, on the first draw, because he did chump with one of the clouds there on the first draw. So
both clouds did die, so that's 2 cards drawn. That one Sapphire allowing the drop of Mirror Knight, Stormcloud, even though neither of the Stormclouds actually ended up with any counters, no Stormlings. They each at least gave a card, and with looking at that with Monsoon, a Stormcloud that can come back, that dies and comes back, not with its counters, because it loses its. If I believe it loses its counters when you sacrifice it for Stormlings, but even just having them back, just passively gaining more charges and giving you more Stormlings, while also Stormlings are one attack flights also that can end games just simply in that way.
Yeah, that's right. That's for sure. And even if it loses the counters, just being able to come back and make more guys or dying and drawing cards again for us later would be good. So yeah, there's no video at the moment. We're just chatting about what could potentially be happening here. So we're just waiting for Colin to come back up on the stream here.
Just to recap, we are in round 1 of the FiveShards Ruby Cup, sponsored by Technofee. Our current featured match is Hex Colin. And speaking of which, we are in game 2. His opponent, Lothlorien, did win game 1. Colin does need to win the next 2 games in a row to advance out of here with a win. And so here we go. So Colin is on a 5-minute delay, so we have no hand blocker. So we can see that we're starting with a Mimeobot targeting an Electroid. Now,
Electroid, a
given
fine choice there. Nice, efficient body.
he does not have a Ruby yet, so that Construct Foreman is not part of the plan, and I think you can see that, uh, given the choice of Electroid, perhaps. No, I think the Electroid is probably the most solid choice of those two. I guess if your hand is going well, if you have a board of two or three dwarf robots, drawing an Electroid is nice, but there's always that risk. You're playing against Extinction. Electroid might be a dead draw at some point, but if it's not dead, it's 3/4 and certainly able to hold its own against things like Vampire King.
Yeah, and that's really the thing there, in my opinion. Like being able to attack through a Vampire King and requiring a second blocker is probably what just makes it a little bit better there.
Lothlorien with no turn one play, just playing that Sapphire. A repeat of that last game and no Sapphire isn't about to happen. And now the Mimeobot is going to become a little bit bigger. A little bit, meaning triple the size. Construct Form and Heck finding a good target.
Construct Foreman, one of the reasons that Mimiobot is good in the deck.
And
And
unlike yep.
to attack with the 3/3 on turn 2.
And that 3 damage will add up. In the last game, Colin only could attack with a couple of 1/1s. Here we have a 3/3 Warbot off the bat, and although we may see Cerulean Mirror Knight and some Storm Clouds, Warbot's bigger than both of them.
This time around, Lothlorien is able to get the Sapphire and the Blood to start out the game here. But no turn 2 play. No Tunnel.
No Reese or Monsoon.
No Resoon, as some of our players like to say. I do really like how Lothlorien has multiple tunnelers, and you don't actually know what it is that he's got going on there.
Indeed, as Reese became more popular in the Shattered Destiny meta, there are definitely decks where you can look at that tunnel troop and it's like there's nothing this can be. And both in Blood with Monsoon, Wakazashi Ambusher, and in Ruby with Scrap Tech Brawler and Mesmeric Hypnoscientist, there are other options that can, and Fisher Smith now that the bug was fixed.
Yep. Yep.
There are alternate options for tunneled troops, and that really brings out the I don't know what this is, and because I don't know what this is, I have to plan for every possibility. Do I pick one?
Definitely makes for a good shell game, so to speak, here. We do see Colin making the worker bot after playing the Electroid and both plans. Be interesting to see if he plays around Extinction this time or just goes for the damage and just makes another bot.
Until he sees that second blood, he doesn't have to worry yet. But if Lothlorien does have that second blood, I would hold that until to be the last resource played for that Extinction. This is a fairly typical robot dwarf start, so an Extinction will put a damper in that for sure.
Colin preemptively exhausting the Electroid here.
It is getting bounced.
It does seem pretty likely that he would put that one back.
Oh.
Actually, the war bot would be a good target there.
Warbot is, because it is a 4 cost, now 5, and there's no way that can enter play again next turn.
That's true. No, that is actually the better play there, just because of the higher cost there. And by the time he could play it again, Lothlorien may have a Vampire King out.
But realizing that used to be a Mimeobot, while it's good, it's not. I'm trying to think of this in terms of card advantage. It is a board advantage. It is a Warbot put back to hand. It's good. It's the best option.
It's still fine for Colin here. I mean, that was certainly the best choice for Lothlorien, but Colin is going to be able to attack and Lothlorien could jump. Seems likely he would jump if he's got the extinction, but otherwise, Colin's going to get in for 5. And we do see no blocks here. Colin will get in for 5. And he is still able to go ahead and turn the Hornet bot number 2 on if there is no extinction coming next turn.
Oh, that is a valid side deck. A Sorrow, giving all troops -1/-1 for the turn. That actually does result in 3 of Colin's troops being destroyed. That's fairly effective.
Yeah, Sorrow is a good card against the dwarf deck here. Usually need to have a little bit to back it up, but as we see, Lothlorien does have a Buccaneer in play.
Would
Colin won't be able to attack with the Electroid next turn or the Hornet bot, either one. So
would you have attacked with Buccaneer first?
to see if he potentially blocks.
Right.
Um,
It does make,
it,
if he does double block, assuming that he does it with the Construct Foreman and the Worker Bot, it does kill 2 troops, but you save your Sorrow. There
right.
is still another Hornet Bot as well.
I would probably do it. I don't think what he did was bad, but I would probably do it because, in my view, if Colin does block and he exhausts another troop to go ahead and make the Hornet bot, now your Sorrow kills off both flyers instead of killing off the ground guys. It's still okay what he did. He got in A damage. He killed off most of his guys, and he stops the Electroids this turn. But yeah, if he had attacked first and gotten the double block, he could have potentially gotten both of the flyers there
It's an
instead.
option, and given that we don't see what's in Lothlorien's hand, it might have been, it might be accounting for other cards that he's willing to play. Maybe he wants his Buccaneer. Of course, having this Buccaneer out now means he can block, he can attack, and actually choosing not to attack. Also of note, we didn't really mention this, but Lothlorien is at 3 resources and only
Still
1
stuck
blood.
on. Yep.
So unless he's holding Extinction and draws a blood, or he may even draw a blood and doesn't have Extinction, this could be Colin's opportunity to close out this game.
Yep. Lothlorien wisely choosing to stay back there because Colin's got a lot of ways to get that 4th bot this turn. I mean, pretty much anything does it.
I mean, the Warbot in his hand, the newly drawn Terrobot, either one of those will enable it. But a counter magic.
Counter magic on Terrabot, pretty much the best counter magic target in my opinion. There, I guess with Colin's list, his list is a little different, so that's not true. He's got some other good targets there, but the Terrabot is definitely one of the better ones because it's a big artifact flyer.
Though Colin has enough resources that even drawing another Terrobot, given that all his Terrabots in his all zones have +2 cost, I mean, it will still have its cost reduced to the point where he could play it. A lot of robot decks actually go less resources, so they tend to not get to really high resource counts, and that would hurt more. But he can even still play the Warbot to activate his Electroids. His Electroids are ready to go, or even a charge will give him a Worker Bot and an additional robot that cannot be interrupted with counter magic.
Yeah, ideally Colin would like to draw another shard here, I think, just to guarantee he's able to attack.
Funny enough, there are actually a lot of Electroids in Colin's deck from the first turn Mimeobot.
Mm-hmm.
If you're wondering why so many Electroids there should only be 4, there are actually a lot. And given that Mimeobot, well, the Mimeobot target isn't known, but a second counter magic on that Electroid does mean the remaining 5 Electroids in Colin's deck are all cost +2. Not that it matters a horrible much, but more importantly, the 2 Terrabots aren't attacking this turn.
Yeah, it's definitely important to keep the like pretty much. I think Lothlorien would be forced to counter anything Colin would have played there. So you could have made an argument potentially for playing the Warbot just because you know you won't draw it naturally. So, and losing the Warbot would not be the end of the world. Actually, keeping the second Electroid around would have been better. But it may not matter. Lothlorien's still stuck on 3 here. He does have a cloud which can block. Does he have a shard? Does not appear he has a shard, though.
I would assume, well, if he had that storm cloud, would he have played it earlier? I'd imagine so, but having those counter magics open has needed to be important. But obviously, no interrupt up now. Only one resource for Lothlorien. Warbot should be able to get through. There isn't a quick blood or sapphire one cost trick that can do much here.
Right.
He's forced to block. He's forced to block, or he's at 4 health.
Also worth pointing out, if Colin had sequenced in the other order and played the Warbot last turn, he would be able to do 2 things this turn, actually. Playing both the Electroid and that other card.
Ah, yes.
May not end up mattering, though. Lothlorien's still stuck on 3 resources. Chop blocks both of these guys and goes down to 2.
The game will continue if he is in fact holding an extinction and happens to draw blood right here. Two big ifs. But it does not seem to be a case, and Colin will even this match at 1 game apiece.
I like the reserves change for Lothlorien there. Sorrow and Extinction together seemed like a good combination against the Dwarf deck.
If a deck wins or does well in what is it now, 4 or 5 shard cups in a row, it's probably a good idea to prepare for that with your reserves cards.
For sure.
And it also stops several other decks. Royal Falconer doesn't particularly like Sorrow.
Yeah, Sorrow is definitely a card that has some targets. It's not like if you're playing against some other aggro decks in general, like I can't really think of any aggro deck where you wouldn't want to have Sorrow. Yeah, I think in general I'd be pretty happy with it. So like if there would be a mono ruby aggressive deck, for example, not that we've seen one of those for a while, it's probably pretty good there. There's a lot of X1s in a deck like that typically. And as you mentioned, the Falconer, of course, which is a great target for Sorrow.
But a lot of aggressive decks have tended to take the 2 defense things in their development. Gorefeast in particular, with the release of Shattered Destiny, saw more use of Stormcloud as an addition. Sorrow actually decent against, well, not really decent against. Will kill Stormlings, but the Stormlings will just pop themselves in response.
That's true. And if it's on his own side, oftentimes you'll be able to have the Mirror Knight or the Monsoon out there first, which mitigates the damage. It's hard to say. I mean, he definitely still had both of those cards in the deck. Not entirely sure what he took out. Maybe cutting some ripples? I'm not sure. Maybe cutting some counter magics down. Well, obviously he still had counter magic in. I'm not sure what he changed. But either way, I like the Sorrows.
Colin's on top of his overlays. The moment the game ended, he put his login screen splash back up, and I just had a random thought here. If he had screen capped the test server login screen and put that up there, we'd be all confused. Like, how he's Colin? Does he have the set 3 client already? Wouldn't actually surprise me. But anyway, that is an aside. We'll put that aside as
Colin had set 3 cards in his deck already.
We did say if you got them, use them. But here we go. We're starting game number 3. This is you're watching round 1 of the FiveShards.com Ruby Cup, sponsored by TechnoFee. Colin and his opponent Lothlorien are at 1 game apiece. This best of 3 match will be decided by this game. Colin, for the first time in this game, is starting the game with a recent hand. Would you maybe bought a Reese?
I would. I do really like Reese, and even drawing it late game, I think I still would probably prefer Reese here.
About 3 seconds after I asked that question, I realized that the replica Reeses are not unique. So
exactly.
Were you to draw one, you can just tunnel one and not have a care in the world.
Yeah, and for me, it's more like if the game is going to go long, would I rather have more ways that I can have, Reese generating more troops that are potentially hard for him to deal with, or do I want to have more of the Mimeobot?
Also, for the first time this match, we see that Tectonic Mega Hulk is indeed in Colin's list. It is now a very trivial 9 cost, as Gearsmith does reveal three cards. He gets to take an artifact into his hand, and it gets cost -1.
So that is fun. Again, pointing out something we talked about earlier, when you have multiple good tunneling options, it definitely can keep your opponent off guard when they don't know which one it is that you might have. Especially
And
important when it's Reese versus Monsoon, but I feel like these two that Colin have here would make you play a bit differently, potentially, too.
worth noting, Lothlorien has never actually seen the race. It was tunnel at the end of game 1. It was in hand at the end of game 2. So, if I were Lothlorien, I would probably, if a troop were tunneled, I would still expect that to be Mega Hulk. And if that is what Lothlorien's thinking about, an extinction or a sorrow to get rid of a board to slow down the tectonic Mega Hulk, uh, while still very good, that's interesting.
Exactly. No, you're exactly right, Hacky. Like when you have more troop. Ooh,
Yeah.
that is interesting.
Verdict apparently good enough to use against Hex Geode. I think given perhaps the speed of Lothlorien's hand is such that he can't really take a construct foreman, turning that into a warbot and doing 3 damage a turn starting next turn. So that's the scenario I can think of for why I would not want my opponent to have a Hex Geode.
Right. It stops the 3 damage on this next turn. And the other thing too, when you're playing against an aggressive deck like Colin's got here, sometimes you just have to throw your cards at them and just hope that you get to the late game where your more powerful cards can just win anyway. So it may be a case there where that's what's going on. I feel like
Yep.
the construction plans in general are better targets, but it's not terrible.
He might also be like construction plans are a good target. The Gore Feast, if I would assume was
Yep.
cited out just because Sapphire access to Verdict. Gore Feast becomes a 4 cost expensive liability as you play it and have to go. You have 2 open. Do you have Verdict?
Yeah, that's one of the things for sure. As casters here, we don't know exactly how Colin decided to change it.
A funny thing, Lothlorien has 3 resources, but only 1 Sapphire threshold. I believe we saw a Cracking Vortex last turn. Did we also see one
Yep.
the turn before?
Yep. Lothlorien has this is one of the problems of playing Crackling Vortex in a dual shard deck. Not only is he not able to play blood cards, but he's not even able to play double sapphire cards. So if he had counter magic, he wouldn't even be able to use it right now.
It's going to be interesting. In Armies of Myth, we do have a neutral resource that doesn't give a threshold, but I forget its name already. It's got sphere, whatever that sphere is. But will
Star.
the star sphere? Will players play that in, for example, dual shard decks that are reliant on getting correct thresholds? It's one of those balance things that is a risk, just like playing too few or too many of a certain resource, certain threshold.
Right. Yeah, it's one of those things where it's yeah. Without speculating too much, it mainly is going to come down to can your deck afford to have that many shards that don't produce the thresholds, and we can see sometimes it ends up being a little too greedy for you. You see
So
Mimeobot and another tunnel here.
once that Mega Hulk entered Colin's hand, he has that option. Do I want more Reese's and do I want more Mega Hulks? Mega Hulk in this style deck, barring Extinction wiping a board, will be faster. So let's say, but the Extinction will be timed such that it'll likely hit before Reese enters play, if he can get enough robots to make it happen. Also, there's a Time Ripple in Colin's hand that he drew at some point. So that is an answer, if not main deck, certainly put in for things like Vampire King.
Yep, I like the Ripple here for sure. Both as a way to protect whatever big bomb you have, or to get Vampire King out of the way. Wow, that's a good draw.
March of the Machines happening right here.
Indeed. Looks like Colin's deciding that he wants to be conservative this game. We noticed that he didn't play the champion power last turn. We see him tunneling and just attacking for 2.
I will be interested to see if he ends up playing that Electroid to speed up the Mega Hulks a little bit. But every troop that he plays is one step closer to extinction. But given the order that Lothlorien has played resources, he's likely going to need to top deck a Blood, so he might feel a little bit safer playing that Electroid. Indeed, he does.
Yeah, I think Colin was thinking that he wanted to go conservative because Lothlorien has shown us Sorrow, and we know he's got Extinction, which I'm sure he kept in as well too. So not overextending is one of the key things when you're playing an aggro deck against a control deck like this. You do see a Buccaneer here.
There are worse targets than a Electroid. It means he can't attack next turn, but that does mean he can hold that Worker Bot. He doesn't have to use it next turn to enable the Electroid's attack. And I mean, that's not bad since Reese will come out the turn after if unprotected. If it resolves, if it doesn't get counter magicked or anything like that, which is a possibility,
Right.
certainly.
Not yet though.
Not
Right
yet
now,
because one threshold Sapphire.
yeah, exactly. Lothlorien really missing those thresholds here because of the vortex.
It's going to be interesting if you want to play the non-standard non-dual shards, having correct thresholds for heavy things, counter magic, Vampire King. Actually, I forget if Vampire King's 2 already.
Yeah, he's too.
Yeah.
He's too happy. You're fine. Yeah, it's also good to point out, it's possible Lothlorien would have had Murder in the main deck, but I'm pretty sure he would have taken it out if he did. So, if that's the case, I mean, you can't Buccaneer at quick speed, obviously. He could potentially have Ripple, but he doesn't play it here. He's just going to go ahead and bounce with the Buccaneer on the Electroid again. But yeah, this Reese is going to pop up, and he is going to be able to activate the champion power and get some good value out of it.
I can imagine. I'm imagining that bouncing this Electroid is both. I don't want you to attack with it next turn, and I'm going to slow down your Tectonic Mega Hulk that's brewing. I mean, your 3
Right.
Tectonic Mega Hulks.
Right. Yeah, and to be fair, as you already said, Hacky, Lothlorien hasn't seen the Reese yet. He could just assume those are all Mega Hulks at this point. Which is also a good reason why he would decide to go ahead and attack into 2 1/1s. If you think your opponent has Mega Hulk, you would be happy for him to go ahead and block with 2 1/1s to get rid of them. But instead, we see Reese here. Reese now would be able to attack into just the single 2/2.
It's a slight upgrade over a Worker Bot, a malfunctioning Warbot.
It attacks. It's got 2
It
power.
does.
Both fine things. Colin did draw a charge bot. I don't think he'll end up playing the charge bot this turn, but I feel pretty confident he's going to hold up Time Ripple. So I think you would play Electroid with Time Ripple here. I don't know. We'll see.
And I mean, a possibility for that Time Ripple is, of course, using it on your own Reese to save him from extinction and playing him again because that is enough value.
Time Ripple could be used as a pseudo verdict, so to speak.
March of the Warbots, malfunctioning Warbots.
There's a lot of malfunctioning warbots, which is actually perfectly fine here. Lothlorien gonna get the shard he needs? I haven't been keeping track of the tunneling counters.
We just assume they'll come up eventually. The first one might be close.
I usually figure about 4 or 5 turns for them, but he's played this one a little bit slow, so it's hard to say for sure.
So a
Lothlorien with
third
another-
Buccaneer.
Yeah. Gotta bounce Reese here, right?
Right. S- Saved from the extinction by his opponent. But even still, that's a lot of attackers. I think Mega Hulk is coming out between he's it's been tunneled for several turns with two dwarf robots out, gets another -5 tunneling and already has 4 counters on its own. That's certainly enough, and indeed Tectonic Mega Hulk is in play. Not enough open 4 counter magic to keep that at bay. One resource isn't enough for anything really. Opponent's at 14. He can block 4. He's then taking another more than 14. I believe this would be the game.
Yep, Colin just doing some math to see here if he needs to, if he has any problems with attacking with everyone.
He should. Actually, those 4 he has selected aren't enough right now. As 5 damage can be stopped, he'll take 12. Attacking with all everything would be correct. And I believe this math is being done. He's in such a commit. Yeah, there we go. Math has been done. He's figured the best block would be to stop the 2 and the 3, leaving exactly 14 damage. And with that, we have not feature match cursed Colin. He will take down this match. I mean,
Yep,
combat math is important. Combat math is definitely important. Making a mistake off by 1 there can be fatal.
Math too hard, lethal too strong. Very good points, Lackey.
Actually, they closed that game out just in time because there's only about 3 minutes left in the round to begin with.
Looks like perhaps some friendly banter between the opponents here.
Yeah, definitely a rough game 2 and game 3. We know Extinction was going to be the card Lothlorien needed to keep the robot aggro at bay, but again, the combination of having fewer sources of blood than he may have liked, not getting them.
Yeah, I think that's what ended up happening here. I didn't see all of it, but I think Lothlorien was commenting about not being able to hit his resources that he needed there. That is, unfortunately, again, one of the downsides of playing Crackling Vortex in a dual shard deck. Sometimes you don't have enough resource thresholds to get the ones that you need.
Even in a mono shard deck, in fact, I've been playing around with the super fast orc aggro, farming some gold because we do have a 50% Frostring Arena gold bonus. Got
Yes.
extended art all my cards when the patch hits. But even then, I will get hands where it's like Ruby, Vortex, draw another Vortex, and I'm sitting here with a bunch of double Ruby cards. Even then, you're still not guaranteed to have those. The Vortexes and other non-threshold shards will still come up at inopportune times.
That's true. Yeah, there's definitely, and there's lots of little, advice articles out there or deck calculators that you can go and actually figure out what are your odds of hitting the thresholds that you need. Yeah, it's unfortunate to see a game that didn't get a lot of interaction there, but he did get to play several Buccaneers, which was nice.